Good evening and welcome to NTD News. I'm Stephanie Cox. Here are today's top stories. Michigan's Senate Oversight Committee held a hearing on the absentee ballot counting process at Detroit's TCF Center. Witnesses gave their testimonies where they described being harassed and seeing evidence of fraud. A legal group investigating the election gave evidence indicating that 280,000 ballots disappeared after being shipped across state lines. One whistleblower said he delivered a similar amount of ballots on his way to New York. Melissa Carone, a witness who was contracted to work for Dominion, testifies to the Michigan Senate. She says paper-jammed ballots were rescanned multiple times on election night. Attorney General Barr says the Department of Justice has not uncovered evidence of widespread voter fraud. President Trump's legal team responded to the comments. President Trump is urging Georgia's governor to take action on matching signatures. That's with the deadline for recounts fast approaching. A long list of witnesses testified at Michigan's Senate committee earlier. Witnesses included Republicans and independent poll workers and poll challengers who said they were prevented from fully doing their jobs and were treated with hostility. NTD's Christina Kim has the story.
Witnesses in Michigan gave similar testimonies of the irregularities they saw in the absentee vote counting process. One witness said that their testimonies and affidavits are so important because videotaping was not allowed at the center. Many spoke of seeing or experiencing GOP poll workers being harassed.
I witnessed the room erupt in thunderous applause and derogatory cheering as Republican poll workers were picked off one by one and ejected from the room repeatedly by police escort throughout the day, all trying to intimidate me and prevent me from doing my job, claiming that I was endangering their workers, trying to kill their people, and even holding a pen in a threatening way. Yet, when non-GOP operatives would stand near the tables and harass me, no one would give them any problem at all.
And from my skin color, everybody assumes that I'm a Democrat. And so they just kind of come to me. And one of the ladies was thinking that let's get these MFs out. And I'm like, MFs who? Like, because she thought I was a Democrat. Then when I pulled out my tag, she looked at me and she's like, you're on the wrong side.
I would get 2 or 3 of the poll workers literally screaming at me to get back 6 feet. At no time were we able actually to physically see the ballot and then see it in the poll electronic book.
Poll challenger Karen Cordes said she barely saw any Republican poll workers. She said she saw military ballots, all in fancy stationery envelopes, and while each ballot had different names, they had the same birth date of January 1st, 1900, which she said was highly unusual.
And nobody could tell me why the birth dates were 1900. When I went to challenge those votes, the supervisor at the table told me, and I quote, "We're not doing that."
She said the supervisor eventually was convinced to write in the poll book that Karen Cordes is challenging this vote and is challenging every subsequent ballot hereafter. Cordes never got an explanation for the identical birth dates.
I was called names whenever my mask fell down even a little below my nose. I'd be called names. I'd say I was killing people, stuff like that, while they'd be talking to somebody not wearing a mask.
Poll worker Adam DeAngeli said he has an audio recording of one of the training sessions where trainers talked about how social distancing rules could be used to impede poll challengers.
So a trainee asks, so if they're 6 feet back, they can't actually see. And the trainer says, exactly, not unless they've got really good vision or they brought their binoculars. And later on, another trainee asked, what if they get really mad and they're yelling? The trainer responded, quote, 911, call the police on them, have them thrown up out of there.
To all of the challengers.
He said the city was setting up a confrontational setting where poll challengers were unable to fulfill their duties. His testimony was filed into a lawsuit on October 23rd and was settled with the Secretary of State, who said they would amend the policies. Christina Kim, NTD News.
During the Michigan Senate Oversight Committee hearing, one witness testified that Republican poll challengers were locked out while military ballots were counted. She said when she did get into the counting room, all of the ballots were identical for Biden, and none were from registered voters.
Patty McMurray has worked as a poll challenger for 9 years. This year, she worked at the TCF Center in Detroit. She began her testimony by showing the committee a thick folder of affidavits.
These are affidavits from Republican poll watchers or poll challengers that witnessed incredible events at the TCF Center.
The affidavits contain multiple first-hand accounts showing the mistreatment of Republican poll workers and violations of vote counting procedures. McMurray said just when the military ballots were brought in, the poll watchers and challengers were told to take a break. The Democrat workers had food and seating provided inside the room. Republicans, on the other hand, had to go to a room upstairs.
When we got back, the doors were locked. I was able to get back into the room, but I witnessed pizza boxes being placed over the windows so that the poll challengers couldn't see in, and those are being placed over the windows by election workers and by the agitators that were down there.
According to McMurray, the state secretary, Jocelyn Benson, said in a radio interview that it was police who covered up the windows, but McMurray said it wasn't the police and accused Benson of making it up. McMurray also detailed what she saw once she got inside the counting room.
Not one of the military ballots was a registered voter, and the ballots looked like they were all exactly the same Xerox copies of the ballot. They were all for Biden across the board. There wasn't a single Trump vote, and none of the voters were registered. They had to manually enter the names and addresses and a birth date of 1/1/2020, which would override the system and allow them to enter non-registered voters.
She claimed that throughout the day, poll workers used this method to override voters that were neither in the electronic or paper poll book. McMurray also testified that when a damaged ballot was duplicated onto a new ballot, Republicans were obstructed from seeing what was written onto the new ballot.
Whenever we would try to watch the process, the person that was inspecting the ballot would stand in front of us, and if we tried to move to the side, they would challenge us and tell us to stand back, that we were too close, that we were going to kill people with COVID.
Multiple witnesses shared similar testimonies of obstruction during the hearing. Grace Coulter, NTD News.
And Trump's attorneys Rudy Giuliani and Jenna Ellis are scheduled to visit Michigan on Wednesday after not being able to attend today's hearing. That's according to a statement from the Michigan House Oversight Chair Matt Hall and a Twitter post from Ellis. Hall invited Giuliani to speak to the Oversight Committee on election irregularities. It's not yet known if another public hearing will be held. And a woman who worked on servicing Dominion voting systems testified at the Michigan Senate hearing. She says she saw fraud at Detroit's TCF Center, like the same ballots being scanned multiple times. NTD's Miguel Moreno has that story.
So I would just walk up and down the rows.
Melissa Carone, a contractor who worked with Dominion voting system at Detroit's TCF Center, testified at a Senate committee hearing on Tuesday. She says that she saw fraud all throughout her time there on the 3rd and 4th of November.
What I witnessed at the TCF Center was complete fraud. The whole 27 hours I was there, there was batches of ballots being ran through the tabulating machines numerous times, being counted 8 to 10 times. I watched this with my own eyes. I was there to assist with IT.
Carone says the proper way to scan ballots when there's a paper jam is to reset the count. In other words, discard the count on the machine and rescan all of them with the jammed paper on top. But apparently that didn't happen, and counters rescanned ballots without resetting the count. She went on to say that there were people on the night shift who were completely untrained, one of which was a friend of hers that she's known for over 20 years.
They were allowed to do whatever they wanted to do. Nick, and Samuel that worked for Dominion, they were on the stage. They had a contract employee, me, and another one that was from Texas. I have his name right here, Miles Smiley, 90-year-old man there to assist with IT work. And he did not have any kind of background in IT and worked in and lived in Tennessee. So this man was just walking around aimlessly. You know, I was really the only one running around like crazy helping these people.
In an interview with the Epoch Times, Carone says that Dominion hasn't contacted her since she submitted her affidavit. Miguel Moreno, NTD News.
A poll challenger in Detroit said in a sworn affidavit that the voting machines appeared to be illegally connected to the internet. He said he noticed an unusual error message on the tabulator's computers and that the error message may indicate the tabulators were trying to connect to a remote database. NTD's Kevin Hogan has more.
Starts with, once you break that link up at the top.
Patrick Kolbeck is a former Michigan State Senator, an aerospace engineer, and a poll challenger in Detroit. He served at the absentee voter counting board from 5 p.m. on Election Day to roughly 5:30 p.m. the next day. He calls it a marathon shift. Kolbeck said the counting boards all had electronic poll books, which are one of the links in the chain of custody to maintain an election. He did not identify physical internet connections to the poll books, but he did notice Wi-Fi networks on his phone, including one called AV Connect. He suspects the AV stands for absentee voter. He became suspicious and started investigating.
I went to all the different tabulator workstations, went underneath the table and checked out where all these cables were routed. All the tabulator computers were connected via Ethernet cables to a network router, and that router in turn was connected to another router. It was connected to the adjudicators. Those were connected to another router slash firewall.
Kolbeck said all of these were connected to the local data center. He tried to verify if the voting machines were connected to the internet by asking other election officials if they were. The officials said there was no internet connection. Having seen the physical connection underneath the tables, he decided to check all of the terminals. As you can see in the schematic, all of them had an internet connection based on the connectivity icon in the bottom right corner of the screen. Kolbeck went back to one of the officials to talk about what he saw.
I said, tell you what, you can dispel this once and for all. Just do me a favor, move your little mouse over that little icon down the bottom right-hand corner. It'll pop up words that say connected to internet or not connected. And you can dispel this whole thing right away. And he said, you're just going to have to trust me.
The possible internet connection is important, Kolbeck says, because the chain of custody must be maintained from the qualified voter file all the way to the last step, the final vote tally. He says these error messages, combined with the evidence of 6,000 votes being switched in Antrim County, show why the internet connection is important.
And I would submit that many of the features of Dominion that are being characterized as glitches are actually design features of Dominion to help people manipulate the results of the election.
Kolbeck's findings are further complicated by a declaration in Sidney Powell's lawsuit in Georgia. In it, a military intelligence analyst has declared Dominion software was accessed by agents of China and Iran to manipulate the U.S. 2020 general election. Kevin Hogan, NTD News.
The legal group the Amistad Project says that as many as 300,000 ballots may have mysteriously disappeared ahead of the election. They presented evidence and 2 whistleblowers gave testimony.
In Arlington, Virginia, the Amistad Project claimed that up to 280,000 ballots were transported from Bethpage, New York to Lancaster, Pennsylvania and disappeared on October 21st. Former Attorney General to Kansas and director of the Amistad Project, Phil Klein, said they have several eyewitness accounts as well as tangible evidence.
This evidence demands investigation. This demands answers. The American people deserve such answers.
3 witnesses spoke, 2 of whom were subcontract workers with the United States Postal Service. One of the workers said he transported around 288,000 ballots to New York. Shipping ballots across state lines is a federal crime.
On October 21st, when I arrived for my usual route in Bethpage, New York, an expediter made 3 references to ballots that were to be loaded into my trailer, including saying, hey, you've got a ballot today, or you have ballots today, and even showing me a piece of registered mail and saying someone really wanted their ballot to count.
Klein said there are institutions and persons available to the public who can easily confirm the sworn statements made by their whistleblowers, but many of them have refused to be transparent.
People refuse to speak and decide to not be forthcoming. They do it for a reason. Generally, this refusal comes down to 1 or 2 reasons or a mixture of both. They are afraid, or they have done something or participated in something which they do not want others to know about.
The Amistad Project filed lawsuits in several states in recent weeks, including one on November 26 in Michigan. They said they have been contacted by and communicated with the FBI and U.S. attorneys from various jurisdictions. Don Tran, NTD News.
President Trump's legal team released a statement in response to Attorney General William Barr's comments on the election. In an interview with the Associated Press, Barr said the Department of Justice has not uncovered evidence of widespread voter fraud.
In the interview, Barr claimed FBI agents had been working to follow up on complaints and information they've received. He said the DOJ has so far not seen fraud on a scale that could have affected the outcome in the election. Trump's attorneys Rudy Giuliani and Jenna Ellis responded in a statement. With all due respect to the Attorney General, there hasn't been any semblance of a Department of Justice investigation. They said they have many witnesses who have sworn under oath that they saw crimes being committed in connection with voter fraud. And they said as far as they know, not a single one has been interviewed by the DOJ. The statement also said the Justice Department also hasn't audited any voting machines or used their subpoena powers to determine the truth.
In today's Michigan Senate hearing, a witness claimed she rang the FBI twice to provide first-hand information on voter fraud. She said she has not heard back from them since. And the Trump campaign has just filed a new election lawsuit in Wisconsin today. This came in response to Wisconsin's certification of its election results on Monday.
The Trump campaign announced on Tuesday, December 1st, that it has just filed an election lawsuit with the Wisconsin Supreme Court. The suit is filed under the names of Donald Trump, Mike Pence, and the Trump campaign against the Wisconsin governor and several other election officials in the state. This new lawsuit claims unlawfulness and irregularities that impacted at least 221,000 ballots out of the 3 million ballots cast in Wisconsin. A statement released by the Trump campaign says the lawsuit includes 4 cases with clear evidence of unlawfulness, such as illegally altering absentee ballot envelopes, counting ballots that had no required application, overlooking unlawful claims of indefinite confinement, and holding illegal voting events. The lawsuit seeks to exclude from the state's certified results in-person absentee ballots, incomplete and altered certification absentee ballots, certain indefinitely confined absentee ballots, and absentee ballots from illegal voting events. The state of Wisconsin certified its election results on Monday, November 30th. It awarded its 10 electoral votes to Democratic nominee Joe Biden. President Trump and Joe Biden are separated by about 20,000 votes, or 0.62%. There is one other election-related lawsuit in Wisconsin filed by a third party.
President Trump has put pressure on Georgia's governor for the second day in a row, urging the governor to act on issues at the heart of Georgia's election controversy. NTD's Juliet Song reports.
Nobody thought they'd ever see it. President Trump is urging Georgia's governor to match the signatures of ballots. That's as the state is only a day away from its deadline for a recount. Addressing Georgia's governor Brian Kemp on Twitter, Trump wrote, "You allowed your state to be scammed. We must check signatures and count signed envelopes against ballots, then call off election." The Trump campaign has been arguing if ballots can't be proved authentic, then recounts are meaningless, unless the ballot signatures can be verified. A Trump lawyer has requested Georgia's top election official for the 5th time for a signature audit. He alleges the state has around 40,000 illegal absentee ballots, a number enough to overturn Biden's lead of over 12,000 votes. Georgia's path to an election result hasn't been smooth. Amidst allegations of voter fraud, the top election official ordered a hand recount, during which officials found thousands of uncounted votes, most of them for Trump. And the hand recount itself has been controversial. Dozens of witnesses wrote sworn affidavits claiming to see signs of voter fraud. 3 of them said they saw ballots cast for Trump were counted for Biden. Also, 9 witnesses wrote in affidavits that they saw mail ballots that raised red flags. What makes the ballots suspicious to them is that they are pristine, uncreased, perfectly filled out, and overwhelmingly for Biden. These witnesses worked for the hand recount in different counties. After the hand recount, Georgia certified a Biden win. And now the state is going through another round of machine recounts at the request of the Trump campaign. Georgia's top election official Brad Raffensperger has refused to audit ballot signatures, citing voter privacy concerns. And Trump has been trying to press the governor to overrule the Secretary of State over the signature matching. On Monday, he questioned why Governor Brian Kemp won't use his emergency powers, which can be easily done to overrule his obstinate Secretary of State and do a match of signatures on envelopes, adding, "It will be a goldmine of fraud and we will easily win the state." In response, Kemp's spokesperson said the law prevents the governor from interfering in elections. Governor Kemp earlier urged an audit of the ballot signatures. He also certified a Biden win on the same day. Reporting by Juliet Song, NTD News.
Attorney Sidney Powell said someone had removed a Dominion voting system server from a recount center in Fulton County, Georgia. The remark came during an interview on Lou Dobbs Tonight on Monday. Powell said someone went down to the Fulton Center, where the votes and Dominion machines were, claimed there was a software glitch, and they had to replace the software, and it seems that they removed the server. The director of external affairs for Fulton County told the Epoch Times that the server in question is still on the premises, and the Fulton County Board of Commissioners chairman told reporters that the Dominion server did crash when they were nearly 90% finished with the recount. He said that the on-site Dominion technician wasn't able to fix it, so another technician from the company flew in. He denied any wrongdoing. This comes after a judge's order blocked 3 Georgia counties from altering or erasing data on Dominion voting machines. And Powell also said during the interview that she and her team are going to ask the 11th Circuit Court for emergency review of the Georgia lawsuit, asking for immediate impoundment of all the voting machines in the state. And there are some updates from the ongoing election lawsuit in Arizona. A local court has just ruled in favor of a GOP petition to inspect mail-in ballot signatures. Maricopa Superior Court Judge Randall Warner ruled on Monday that the Arizona Republican Party is allowed to inspect a limited sampling of mail-in ballot envelopes, signatures, and duplicated ballots. The judge ruled that the GOP can examine 100 mail-in ballot envelopes selected at random by elections officials. The Republicans can compare the signatures on these envelopes with the voter signatures on file. The party can also examine 100 duplicated ballots and their originals. They will also be randomly selected by elections officials. The petition was filed last week by Arizona Republican Party Chairwoman Kelly Ward. The next court hearing on the petition is scheduled for Thursday, December 3rd. And Trevor Loudon, an expert on radical left and Marxist movements, says pro-communist China voter registration groups are helping flip U.S. elections. NTD's Miguel Moreno has more on Loudon's investigations into the CCP-affiliated network.
Just when you think the election couldn't get any more controversial, in an interview with American thought leaders, expert on Marxist radical left movements, Trevor Loudon said pro-communist China organizations in the U.S. have worked to try and flip the election. He says that Liberation Road, a socialist Chinese-directed group that has close ties to the Chinese regime, is involved in the registration of voters in key states like Georgia and Arizona.
They are the same people who are involved in several large voter registration organizations in many of the key states in question. I'm talking Georgia, Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Arizona. I have them in their own words talking about how they targeted these states to destroy Trump and to win the election for Biden.
Loudon says Liberation Road runs 2 different Chinese progressive associations, one in California's Bay Area and another in Boston. The Boston branch openly works with Chinese communist officials, even holding an event for a Chinese consulate. Liberation Road and both CPAs do voter outreach and registration, and they're openly anti-Trump.
And these are communist groups. These are groups that owe their allegiance to communist China, and they are boasting about winning the election. You know, if you're a leader of the Communist Party of China, would you really want this guy, Trump, in the White House for 4 more years? After all he's done to counter your plans? Or would you use your assets in the United States to try and tip the scales in favor of a much more friendly candidate like Joe Biden?
The Biden family has had extensive business relationships with China, and the Democratic candidate has shown little concern about communist China during his election campaign compared to President Trump. Miguel Moreno, NTD News.
For more insights into how the Chinese Communist Party is subverting America's democracy and potentially fueling a socialist revolution, you can watch the full episode with Trevor Loudon right here on American Thought Leaders tonight at 8 p.m. And up next, a government corruption scandal is bringing down a house of cards in a major West Coast city. And a reference lab in Utah releases a new test that can simultaneously check for traces of COVID, the flu, or RSV. Stay tuned to find out more after the break.
Are you looking for a news source that does not spin the truth, doesn't push any false narratives, and instead presents you with the facts and lets you make up your own mind? Then go to readepic.com and try the Epic Times newspaper for yourself. It's pure honest journalism that's based in traditional values.
A growing government scandal in one California city has led the FBI to make another big-name arrest. FBI documents suggest that even higher-ranking officials may be next on the list.
This is Harlan Kelly, former general manager of San Francisco's Public Utilities Commission. FBI agents raided his house and arrested him yesterday morning on November 30th. Federal prosecutors charged him with wire fraud. Prosecutors allege that Kelly has a long-running bribery scheme and corrupt partnership with a local construction company executive. The charges include Kelly accepting illegal gifts like lavish family trips to both Hong Kong and mainland China. The FBI has messages from Kelly sent on the Chinese-based texting app WeChat. He wrote, "Thank you for the best family vacation ever, a little something for everyone." Kelly's wife may also be a target for investigation, as FBI documents mention her, though not by name. She is Naomi Kelly, a city administrator for San Francisco. The recent arrest ties back to another government official who was taken into custody in January. Mohammed Nuru, who was director of public works, was the first domino to fall. Allegations of corruption against Nuru date back to the early 2000s. Nuru also took gifts like trips to Chile and China. That leads to the second domino, the person who gave these gifts to both Nuru and Kelly, Walter Wong. Wong is a contractor for San Francisco and had allegedly received millions of dollars in preferential contracts. The FBI arrested Wong in June. Both Nuru and Wong are reportedly working with the FBI. At the moment, it is unclear if there are more dominoes to topple over. The FBI's complaint includes allegations against a former San Francisco mayor. In text messages between Kelly and Wong, they referred to the unnamed mayor as 35. The FBI wrote that 35 stands for numbers on a telephone keypad. The 3 may be the letter E, and the 5 may be L, the initials of former San Francisco Mayor Ed Lee. However, Lee died from a heart attack in 2017. San Francisco Mayor London Breed's office said the actions described are disturbing and unacceptable. The Public Utilities Commission did not respond for comment. Kelly has resigned from the commission, but his wife Naomi is continuing as a city administrator. Reporting by Daniel Hall, NTD News, Sacramento, California.
As the flu season hits, it might bring extra sneezing as well as the sniffles. But how would you know if you have the coronavirus or just the common flu? A research lab in Utah says that its new tests can detect the CCP virus, among 3 other viruses, all at the same time.
On November 23rd, a laboratory in Utah announced they have developed a combined test that can detect 4 types of viruses: COVID-19, influenza type A and B, and respiratory syncytial virus, RSV. The tests cost $140 each and would be ordered from clinics and physicians. It's currently not available for consumer purchase. ARUP Laboratories has COVID-specific tests that uses saliva samples. Because this is a combined test, it uses samples taken from a deep nasal swab. It can also be done with the nostrils and the back of the throat. People can expect test results within 1 to 4 days after the lab receives the samples. Dr. Adam Barker, director of AREP Laboratories, told the Epoch Times this combined testing would save people money and time.
So why we really wanted to get this test online is if you order RSV, flu, and COVID all separately, it's about 3 to 4 times the cost of this test. So we hope insurers see that and realize it's more cost effective to do this one test.
Dr. Barker said they teamed up with the tech company Thermo Fisher. The project took 3 to 4 months to complete.
The accuracy of the assay, so not getting false negatives, is about 99.2%.
Dr. Barker said that they can process about 15,000 of these tests per day. Reporting by David Lamb, NTD News, California.
Coming up, a homeowner took drastic measures in China's financial hub, Shanghai. He saw it as the only option against a harmful yet common practice in China. And Chinese Communist Party members are feeling the pressure under U.S. sanctions. Employees on Chinese vessels and flights are now being interrogated while entering the U.S. That and more after the break.
He ascended to the throne during the most turbulent times in the Joseon dynasty. Despite that, he treated his people well, had great ambitions, and led the country towards a new renaissance. That eventually earned him the title as one of the wisest kings in Korean history. Lee Sun on NTD America.
Chinese Communist Party members are facing increased scrutiny under U.S. sanctions. Employees on Chinese vessels and flights have been interrogated while entering the U.S. NTD's Tiffany Meyer brings us more.
And in the U.S., CCP membership has been put under the spotlight. The CCP mouthpiece, China Daily, reported Monday that U.S. law enforcement officials recently conducted sudden inspections of Chinese shipping personnel to identify any Chinese Communist Party members. The report says a total of 21 Chinese vessels were inspected as of November 11th. Also, the U.S. has interrogated the crews of 16 Chinese airline flights to the U.S. since September. According to the report, some of the interrogations lasted for hours to find out who on board are CCP members and why they joined the party. Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson Hua Chunlin appears so irritated and claims to have made stern negotiations with the U.S. over the issue. But most Chinese people felt happy about the entry ban posed on the CCP members. At the beginning of October, U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, or USCIS, issued guidance to deny CCP members entrance to the U.S. Since then, the Chinese keywords for quit the CCP has been spiking on Google Trends in the Chinese region. And visits to the Epoch Times Quitting the CCP website has also skyrocketed. The USCIS guidance is believed to be having a significant impact on Chinese Communist Party elites and may exacerbate internal party conflicts. And preliminary estimates say that around 270 million people will be affected by the policy guidance. Now we turn to Chinese Communist Party or CCP officials and their reportedly dwindling work ethic. Chinese state-run newspaper People's Daily recently published an article exposing regime officials' apparent lack of motivation at work. The article claims that officials often take the easy way out when encountering challenges. It adds that some seem to abide by the idea of the more one does, the more mistakes one will make. So they would rather do minimal work in order to avoid making mistakes. The article also outlines a potential reason. It says officials' opportunities for corruption, bribery, and pocketing public funds are becoming fewer and fewer, meaning that some officials no longer enjoy the luxuries they used to. As a result, they've become passive toward their jobs. It also pointed out that the situation in China continues to worsen, largely in part because regime officials refuse to take responsibility. That leads to problems escalating and spiraling out of control. Researcher Zhong Yuan, who studies China's political system, also shed light on the situation. He says money and power are the main motivators for CCP officials, adding they love taking on big projects like infrastructure or real estate, so they can receive large grants and loans and make money. And with that money, they can then bribe higher-level officials for promotions. But the U.S.-China trade war has crippled the Chinese economy. Production and exports from what's been called the world's factory have dropped, and the real estate bubble is at the point of bursting. Typical methods like relying on large amounts of government investment to stimulate the economy haven't improved the situation much. On top of that, the U.S. imposed sanctions on the CCP are taking their toll. While many countries are now hardening their stances toward Beijing, Chinese officials' assets overseas are now also at risk. And above all else, CCP head Xi Jinping's increasing dictatorship tactics have made officials at all levels extremely cautious, and many hesitate to speak out or act publicly.
One homeowner in Shanghai reportedly took extreme action in order to stave off forced demolition workers that had come to destroy his home. In protest, he ignited a gas tank, causing an explosion that destroyed his property and killed him at the scene.
A resident in China's Shanghai paid the ultimate price in trying to protect his home from destruction. In China, the practice of forced demolition has become commonplace. When the Chinese regime decides to use areas of land for new, often more profitable purposes, it simply sends workers to tear down any residential housing present. Homeowners are usually given little to no compensation and are left homeless. On Sunday, demolition workers arrived at the man's house. In an effort to stop the demolition, he ignited a gas tank on the property, causing an explosion that killed him on the spot. Several others also suffered severe injuries. The incident took place inside of one of Shanghai's most prosperous commercial areas. Homeowners there refuse to relocate. That's because compensation given by authorities is far from enough to buy a new, comparably priced home. One woman from the neighborhood told us that few households there still remain, and property developers have already arranged the sale of the land. She explained that at the time of the explosion, the homeowner was at home with his son. His wife was away taking care of their pregnant daughter-in-law at the hospital. At around 7 o'clock in the morning, the demolition workers began using force to try to take the man's son away.
The father was so desperate that he threw the gas tank. He died immediately. There's nothing he could do but fight back this way because ordinary people have no power or influence.
Another forced demolition victim from the area shared a video online back in early November. It accused the regime of robbing him of his private property and of violating multiple laws.
The regime sold Yongjiadu Lot 3 to property developer Greentown Group, and the company has been holding the land for 20 years. Now the district government is acting as the developer's hired hatchet man. I will defend my home until my last breath and willingly die along with the invaders.
Holding land for that long can cause major problems. That's because in China, when a person of company purchases property, they become the owner of the building. But the land the structure is built on still belongs to the regime. In addition, the regime sets a time limit for land usage rights, normally around 70 years for residential land. The clock starts ticking immediately once the land is bought by a developer. In this case, the developer's decision to hold the land for 20 years means that the homeowners will be left with a maximum of 50 years to use the land. When that time expires, they'll be forced to pay fees to renew the land rights if authorities give the green light. But if the regime refuses to grant another term, or if it wants the land back before that time expires, it leads to the violent forced demolitions that have become commonplace. According to Chinese law, homeowners maintain their rights to their properties as long as the properties exist. The loophole is often exploited. Reporting by Shu Wenhui, NTD News.
Still to come, lawmakers from both sides of the aisle propose a new virus aid package. It's smaller than what House Democrats and the White House had proposed.
Is deep-sea fish oil really healthy? Due to pollution in the oceans, most fish contain heavy metal elements and radioactive substances. That's why it's so important to choose a pure source of omega-3. Puritan Green Vegetable Omega-3 is made from purslane and perilla seeds, which are rich in nutrients and minerals, especially vitamins A, D, E, calcium, and iron. With natural processing and no harmful chemical additives, it has more than 90% concentration of omegas 3, 6, 7, and 9. It effectively improves brain power and is beneficial to the heart's health. Puritan Omega-3 does not smell of fish and contains no pollutants, so both adults and children can safely and easily consume it over a long period of time. Puritan Green Vegetable Omega-3. Eat 2 a day and you'll feel brand new!
A bipartisan group of House members and senators have unveiled a smaller CCP virus relief package. They're hoping to provide funding before some provisions expire at the end of the year. Louisiana Senator Bill Cassidy says it's a victory for common sense. Both Republicans and Democrats got much of what they wanted in the bill, and it's going to create a lifeline to small business owners, doctors, the unemployed, and others. Virginia Senator Mark Warner says extending expiring unemployment benefits was a crucial part of the package. And Utah Senator Mitt Romney says liability protections for some businesses, a key provision for Republicans, was also included in the measure. The bill, according to the lawmakers, has the support of 25 Democrats and 25 Republicans. And California businesses are already struggling to stay afloat, but new Los Angeles County is facing another shutdown. Business owners are worried, but once one owner decided to stand up to the governor and deny the order.
New virus restrictions went into effect in Los Angeles County on Monday, leaving businesses worrying how they will survive.
We all closed down. I mean, we went from, 10 tables, chairs out here, more patio space to nothing.
Christine Ramirez manages a Mexican restaurant in a town southeast of Los Angeles. She said the scenario this week is day and night compared to last week. Restaurants are not the only ones feeling the burden. Businesses like Art's Pawn Shop are hurting too.
Still traffic out, nobody walking. I just wish we had more people in here for the holiday season. This is supposed to be the busiest time and it's not, because of all the restrictions.
Some residents support the restrictions but sympathize with businesses.
If the virus is escalating like they say it is, I think it's necessary, but it's a shame for the businesses. Yeah, it's a double-sided coin.
Others disagree with the restrictions.
I don't think the restrictions are necessary because people are going to lose their jobs, and I think they should stay open.
But the restrictions haven't stopped Alex Jordan. He's kept outdoor dining open at his diner, defying county orders.
They shut us down for outdoor dining 3 weeks before Christmas, a month before Christmas. It's without any kind of aid to my employees or even to our small business. I thought it was wrong.
He put up curbside dining and a large tent to comply with earlier requirements. And now he says it's the only way to make sure his 11 employees get paid ahead of the holidays.
That's not really evidence to me to prove that outdoor dining is dangerous, at least not any more so than all the non-essential retail that they've left open, including gyms and nail salons and stores.
He also put a sign next to his restaurant logo reading, quote, French Laundry Patio Dining, in a tongue-in-cheek dig at Governor Newsom's widely criticized dinner party.
Two of the biggest clothing retailers in the UK have gone into administration. It's putting a combined 25,000 jobs at risk.
British tycoon Philip Green's Arcadia Fashion Group has collapsed into administration, becoming the UK's biggest corporate casualty during the pandemic so far. It puts over 13,000 jobs at risk.
mean, if you compare and contrast Arcadia and their performance, for example, on social media and social engagement with the likes of Primark, who don't have e-commerce at all, but Primark are consistently engaging with and talking to customers in a relevant and appropriate manner, and you just don't see that coming out of the Arcadia brands.
Insolvency service provider Deloitte said late on Monday it had been appointed Arcadia's administrator. It's seeking buyers for the group's brands, which include Topshop and Topman. The group trades from over 440 leased sites in the United Kingdom and 22 overseas. Deloitte said Arcadia's stores would continue to trade, its online platforms would remain operational, and supplies to partners would continue. It said no redundancies were being immediately announced. Green was pictured over the weekend in Monaco, where his $133 million yacht Lionheart is docked. He purchased Arcadia for more than $1.1 billion in 2002. A senior UK government minister said the collapse of Arcadia was tragic, but mistakes were made by the management. Arcadia CEO had no comment, but has already blamed the demise of the company on the pandemic. And UK department store Debenhams will close its stores after 242 years of trading. This means the likely loss of another 12,000 UK retail jobs. It has 124 stores across the UK. Their stores will remain open across the Christmas period.
Up next, England will move out of a second national lockdown on Wednesday, but 55 million people will face strict regional restrictions. Lawmakers are investigating the human rights implications of the restrictions. And French restaurant owners want to know why restaurants have to close. An expert says you don't need to wait for scientific evidence to make the decision. That and more when we return.
When you look at TV networks in America, a soundbite and fight-it-out culture prevails on news and commentary programs. As a Canadian, I'm fascinated with America, and I wanted to offer American thought leaders an opportunity to share their thoughts in a deep dive format, where we can explore their ideas together. And so American Thought Leaders was born. The world's most brilliant thinkers believed that open discourse was the key to greatness. However, all around the world, we see that discourse is being stifled and political agendas have subverted media. The Epoch Times launched its Global Thought Leaders program to bring back this great tradition of free thought. As the host of American Thought Leaders, every week I interview some of the most intriguing minds on the most pressing issues of our time. Be sure to check out our new episodes every week.
Over to Europe. NATO's Secretary General warns that China is imposing challenge to its secretary security as it doesn't share NATO's values or respect fundamental human rights. NTD UK's Neil Woodrow will bring us more news from Europe.
On Wednesday, England will move out of its second national lockdown into a stricter set of regional restrictions. Meanwhile, lawmakers launch a new inquiry looking into the human rights implications of long-term restrictions. Here's our UK correspondent Jane Werrell with more.
More than 55 million people in England are set to enter the two toughest tiers of rules from Wednesday.
And of course I accept that this is not a return to normality. I wish it was so. But it is a bit closer to normality than the present restrictions. And what we can't do is to lift all the restrictions at once or move too quickly in such a way that the virus would begin to spread rapidly again.
Under regional rules, public places of worship, as well as non-essential shops, gyms and hair salons can reopen. Meanwhile, as part of its ongoing research, a group of lawmakers in the Joint Human Rights Committee launched a new inquiry about the human rights implications of what they describe as long lockdowns.
There are still very significant impacts on people's lives, on people's privacy, on people's family lives, on people's religious observance. All of these immense impacts that have been caused by lockdown, are they proportionate, which is the key human rights question.
Some lawmakers in the at least 70-strong COVID recovery group that are sceptical of lockdowns say that the restrictions infringe on fundamental freedoms and are calling for more evidence for the measures. Jane Worrell, NTD News, London.
Formula One champion Lewis Hamilton tests positive for COVID-19 and will miss the upcoming Sakir Grand Prix this weekend. Hamilton has already secured a record-equaling 7th world title and won Sunday's Bahrain Grand Prix. His Mercedes team says Hamilton is experiencing mild symptoms and is isolating according to local health guidelines, but is otherwise fit and well. The team says a replacement driver to be announced in due course. Restaurant owners in France are fighting to keep their doors open, taking their cause to the highest political level.
The owner of 4 restaurants in Paris says he wants to fight against the spread of the virus, but he needs to know why he's prohibited from working.
But from what I read in a factual way in the Public Health Agency's report, at no time are restaurants identified as places of infection. Why? Because we have applied strengthened safety protocols.
A health expert said there's no accurate data on infection in French restaurants because restaurants did not require customers to leave personal details, meaning it was hard to trace them. And lack of data should not stop the government making decisions to protect public health.
So are restaurants and bars the places where infection clusters can crop up? Probably yes, but we should not wait for scientific proof to make political decisions.
At the end of October, the French government announced a national lockdown, requiring all restaurants and cafes to close through Christmas and the New Year.
A Greek tree farmer fears thousands of his Christmas trees will go to waste this year because of the lockdown.
Christos Bistios' farm has up to 15,000 trees ready and 30,000 more growing in greenhouses.
This time last year we were already in the markets. Preparations began 15 days beforehand and the trees had been cut.
The densely planted trees must be cut annually or they will dry out.
It's an effort that takes 15 years, so the trees can finally be cut this year.
Bistios says orders are pouring in, and if restrictions are eased, sales could be good this year.
I believe the holidays will be better this year. People will be with their families more, so they'll appreciate the meaning of Christmas even better.
Greece has extended their national lockdown to December 7th. If trees can't go to the market in time, Bistios says he and his fellow 800 villagers could suffer $360,000 worth of losses.
Teachers at a special needs school in Spain see improvements in pupils after a therapy dog joins the classroom.
Returning to school after a 6-month lockdown, teachers say the kids are less responsive because they can't see the teachers' mouths behind masks and have also forgotten their routines. The introduction of a therapy dog into the classes saw a marked improvement.
We saw an evolution and a change in a few sessions. We saw that the student was very receptive and cooperative, carried out activities, and the response to the reaction was much faster. So we understood that it was a very important tool for us.
Therapy dogs support a person's mental health by providing attention and comfort.
Nico helps me when I am stressed or overwhelmed and I need help. He comes over, I pet him, my nerves calm down and I remain calm.
Any friendly breed can become a therapy dog with training. Larger dogs like Labradors, Golden Retrievers and St. Bernards are commonly used, but smaller breeds like Mini Poodles and Pomeranians can also be trained.
That's all for now. Thanks for watching. Back to the New York studio.
Thanks, Neil. And still to come, stores in New York City dress up their windows for the holidays. And this year, they have a special message.
What does it mean to devote your life to the truth? Does it mean investigating communist subversion here in America? Does it mean exposing the deadly fentanyl crisis in the Midwest? Or spending late nights and covering deep government corruption? Does it mean persevering over 20 years even after 4 masked men set one of our printing presses on fire last year. Because at a time when America's traditional values are under attack, it's the responsibility of righteous journalists to uphold truth and tradition.
It's starting to look a lot like Christmas, at least in front of New York City storefronts like Macy's, Bloomingdale's, and Saks Fifth Avenue. Here's a look at their holiday window displays.
Stores in New York City are bringing on the holiday cheer with their window displays. Macy's this year has a special message. It's saying thank you in 16 different languages, as well as clapping hands in support of essential workers and first responders. Interactive windows allow visitors to create personal scrolling messages and record their own round of applause. Bloomingdale's hired out-of-work Broadway costume designers and local artists to help create their festive storefronts. This year, the store is using various scents to enhance the viewing experience. They're sending out the smell of pine next to a window featuring a Christmas wreath made with stuffed teddy bears. Another candy cane-themed window is sending out the scent of peppermint. The retailer's goal is to encourage people to give happy. Saks Fifth Avenue brought scenes of Brooklyn Steiker Heights and Roosevelt Island tram, while Bergdorf Goodman features dazzling stained glass windows with words like joy and peace.
And that's all for today's news. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Stephanie Cox.